to finance meeting, not facilities, finance. And let's see. So first, I would like to get an approval of the meeting minutes of March 15th, 2021.
Make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, any discussion? No, me neither. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, obviously none opposed since we all said aye. All right, next we will move it on to the cost of full day kindergarten in the budget. Hi, Dan.
Okay. Give me a
You didn't
chance.
miss anything, Dan. We just did the minutes.
So, hold
Sorry
on.
about coming on late.
That's okay.
You're only a minute, so.
Yeah, just a minute. That's it.
Let's see. For some reason my PowerPoint, hold on, I'm just looking for my PowerPoint.
It's in there somewhere.
Yeah, with other things.
Yep.
Guys, I just need to get out of something else. Okay. Not sure why this does this to me.
Because you wanted to go right. That's why.
Yeah, I'm not. Today. Okay, now let's go to Zoom. Screen. There we go.
Oops.
All right.
There you go.
Right. All right. See if I can get this right. Are you seeing one or two? I have two.
1.5.
That's not
one,
what-
one bigger one and then the next slide, but only half of that because you guys are all blocking it.
right. That shouldn't be. I did that last time. I apologize.
That's okay.
Okay, that better?
Perfect.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so we'll start with the first item on the agenda, which was, as you asked for it the last time, was, well, first we'll start with the timeline of the budget. So as you know, our board meeting to adopt the proposed final budget is May 13th. The deadline by PDE standards is May 31st. If something was delayed, you have to do it by May 31st. Public notice of intent to adopt will be on June 7th, as long for our board meeting on the 17th of June, and the PDE deadline is on the 30th. Full day K, at the last meeting you asked for the cost of regarding full day K. I know Kim presented it at the workshop meeting, I think the end of February, and this is very close to almost exactly the same numbers. These are the numbers that are in the budget because, you know, we kind of fine tune them a little bit. But I wanted to identify the cost that is involved in full day K that is in the budget for 21-22. So as you see, we have 4 new elementary teachers, 2 specialists, and of course there's supplies and books and technology supplies, and then transportation. The transportation, what I did is I netted out, now the current year, we do not pay for midday transportation, and we have not paid in the past. But regardless of the vendor that we would have used moving forward, midday transportation was a subject of concern that each one of them would have billed us for that extra service. When Coventry took over for Gross, they didn't realize that that was something that was part of our contract. So of course they weren't able to bill us for that, but moving forward, even if they would have been successful, they would have also billed us for that additional transportation. So the transportation for full day K is really, well, about 108,000, but it would be reduced by the midday cost anyway. So it's roughly only about 30,000 additional over what would have been next year if it was half the.
So 108,000.
Well, 108,000 is what it's cost, but I reduced it. So in this calculation, the 631, it's actually reduced to only about 32,000 because I would have paid for the half-day kindergarten if we had continued with that. So I didn't want to inflate that cost. So
Okay.
it is net of that half-day K.
Okay.
The capital expenses, now these are not in the budget. These would come out of the capital funds, are considering the facilities improvements, the furniture, casework, and supplies. This was also presented at the end of February, and this is as far as accurate as I know. The facilities improvement itself is around 99,000 estimated, and the furniture, casework, and supplies is the other 280,000. So in total, to implement full day K is a little over $1 million.
Okay.
Well, for these
Right.
costs, don't know what else would be there.
Okay, and 631 then would technically be close to that, would technically be the ongoing,
Correct.
okay. With increases and whatever. Yeah,
Right,
the-
with the regular increases in salaries, benefits, and then as listed, yes, transportation.
Okay. Okay,
So there was a discussion and it was raised, and a student raised concern about midday transportation. Next year, as Dr. Roach, I think, sent in one of his Friday updates, that the intent would be that it would still, if possible, be on site at the high school, so there would be no additional cost. Other than our normal midday, what we will be paying for midday transportation to and from the Western Center. But let's say for some reason that virtual has to be, we don't have the ability to house them at the school, and it would change. And if we were to provide that transportation, it would be another $41,000. That's not something we would have done in the past. We only started doing it this year because of COVID-19 being the pandemic and extraordinary. So the costs that we've sustained this year in transportation, obviously much higher than this due to having to transport from their residence to the Western Center.
okay,
Now,
And as I mentioned, sorry, Sandy, as I mentioned, I did follow up with Dr. Carpenter. So prior to 1920, the pandemic year in March, there was very few students that were at the Western Center that were taking Edgenuity or other online courses through, Kim, what's the name of the high school? Virtual high school, right? Through
Mhm.
virtual high school. So if there was a student at Western that was taking an Edgenuity course or virtual high school, they would get housed in the into the library, kind of a catch-all type of a library or cyber lounge, so to speak. But it wasn't a lot of students, but there were some, and there were other students that were non-Western Center students. They would have that same opportunity to go to that area. So if you think about the history, if you're a ninth grade student, you don't know any different. You've been bused the whole time. Then you went in, and in 1920, you went into the complete shutdown. And then we started this year in 100% virtual. So we provided that level of busing, pick up at the door, drop off there, because that's what we were doing through January. When January started in the hybrid, we were reducing the number of people in the classrooms. So we didn't have a place for students to go if they did not have individual transportation themselves and or parent. Therefore, we kept up that travel, because again, we were trying to keep just the blue students in or just the gold students in, fearing the additional students in there, social distancing and such. And then as we went through this last transition, we simply left that service there, to finish the year out. But heading into next year, if we're offering 5 full days, and I'm not sure what a cyber option or a virtual option will look like at this point. I know we have plans in place for next year, but if that is an option, and hopefully we'll collect some information here later in the month. But in speaking with Dr. Carpenter, it will be, if we're in the same mentality that we're in right now, where we can have students in school, there will be opportunities for these students. They could attend the classes in person, right? If it was a Zoom type of thing, if they happen to be not in that format or in an Edgenuity situation or virtual high school or some other cyber option, they could be housed in the high school, in the library. They could be housed in the Audion. They could be housed in the class themselves. Rough numbers right now, about 200 students are at the Western Center. I think it was about 67 or so, or 68 were in this virtual environment by choice this year. And then when we got down to it, we were below 30, I believe, that needed transportation and or needed, we had students that were driving themselves and that opportunity there. So that's what the discussion will be at the board meeting on Thursday in terms of the same numbers that I just kind of quoted you, that what's budgeted right now is for us to be in 5 full days. And it's typically our freshmen, our sophomores that don't have access to the cars and or need support. So they attend the morning session down at the Western Center. So when they got back, if they needed to be virtual and or work remotely and did not have a ride home, they could be housed in the building as they had previous years, in the library or in the study hall or in another location that will be set up from the school.
Okay.
So that was the reason to not put that additional. I was shocked at that number of 41,000. I thought it was a lot more than that. I don't know if that's a conservative budget piece there. It's a lot of driving to get done in an hour and a half. And once you probably tick over that hour and a half, the price is going to go up. So, and we had at some point this year, and maybe it's currently, we had up to 8 buses, right?
Yes.
So we have the 3 that normally going, and then these are 4 more. It could have been 5 based upon the numbers that are going on right now. So.
Okay. Well, hopefully we won't need to use them next year. And then when it's not in the budget, it's not in the budget.
And the other issue too is timing. I mean, we have to get the kids home in time to get on their virtual class. So definitely if it's in our own building, it's coming from Western Center to the high school and we're good to go. This year, probably some of the reason in some of the vehicles is because you have to get them back by a certain time.
Right.
From home, it just takes longer so they can access their virtual classes.
Okay. Well, hopefully that'll be our recommendation, that we don't do that take them home piece and just have them at the high school, even if they're virtual.
I think the way it rolled out was that again, I checked, I wasn't here obviously because I brought the pandemic here, but at that time, Dr. Carpenter said, yeah, we've had students, again, not just Western Center students, but we have had Western Center students that were involved with that. So I don't know if it would include more, but I did speak with them again today, knowing we'd have this conversation. And if it was a study hall or another area during those last 2 periods of the day, which again, mostly the freshmen and sophomores, they could, that can be accomplished. They're not going to be left out. I think they were literally locked out in January, like, no, you can't come in, so to speak. So that's where that level was needed to provide, because we were in a different state in terms of blue and gold and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. All right.
Will they continue to let as many drivers drive as they did this year because of the pandemic? I don't know if that may change.
I don't know. Chris has been pretty flexible with that. Again, if anything, they drive here, then they get in their car and go home. So,
Right.
We'd have to have some flexibility on our end in terms of the kids getting to class. But again, that's all a part of it. That's why I think at some point we started to drop back off at door to door, as opposed to coming back and then regrouping them and then sending it back out, which could have used probably a little less, but it was a matter of getting them to class on time.
Yep.
It's not designed for them to drive all over the place and then hit McDonald's drive-through and get themselves home.
Right.
Designed. So they would actually eat lunch then at the high school too.
Okay. Okay.
Now on to the budget.
Okay. Rock and roll.
What I did want to highlight the staffing additions to the budget this year, and I just also want to add that I have in the SharePoint, I do have some information for you as far as by function object. So that material is in the SharePoint. So our staffing additions to the budget, as you saw in the full day K, again, budget is your 4 full-time kindergarten teachers, 2 elementary specialists, 2 autistic support teachers to support our autistic program, 1 elementary and 1 middle school, an instructional coach, a network administrator to assist in technology, an administrative support person to assist facilities and technology. Now the instructional coach this year is funded, is actually, if you remember, and you'll see this a little bit later on, our Ready to Learn block grant was usually used to fund full day kindergarten programs that we currently had in the district. COVID year, we obviously didn't have full day kindergarten. So it was reallocated for an instructional coach, and then for some support services that we'll see later on. So now this is in addition to the budget, because it wasn't actually budgeted last year. But it will be supported by revenue that you did see already in February for the Ready to Learn block grant.
Okay.
Can I ask a quick question? I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I am sure you have probably already explained this, but I just don't remember. Why do we only need 2 more elementary specialists? By specialists, I assume you mean special area instructors? Because I know we have like 5 areas of specials. How is it that we're getting away with only, hiring 2?
Well,
So we had to, Sandy, do you want me to take that?
yes, I was just going to say, Kim will be happy to take this.
So we had to get really creative, Judy, because it would have been really impossible to hire 5 teachers part-time, to do that. And so we decided to take advantage of full day K and work to get a kindergarten special specifically just for our kindergartners. So our kindergartners, all full day K kids, will have art, music, PE, library, flight, and an additional special, which will really focus in on their academic and their physical needs as a kindergartner. So we're able to put 1 in each building, support the kindergarten specials, because the other specialists can handle all the other classes. And then we can also have them do a dual role as an instructional coach, which I think we talked about at the dual meeting that we had.
That rings a bell. Okay. I knew that you had probably touched on it, and it just was one of those things that didn't stick in my mind. So we're going to have a specialist who will teach all of those subjects?
No,
No?
the ones that we have currently can handle everything we have. They just couldn't handle, the explosion of full day K. So if we schedule every student K to 5 to get every special, we have some sections that we need covered so teachers can get preps. And that's where that full day K special will come in.
Okay, great.
Kim, can you explain the name of it? Do you have the name of it?
Well, I don't know if we're going to run with it, but we call it UPX or UPXP. It's Upper Perkiomen Extra or Extra Practice. Really is honing in on their literacy and their math understanding and their fine motor skills, and trying to connect some of those things that we know promote learning.
Neat. Okay.
Yeah, I have some teachers really excited about it, so we are too.
Good. Okay.
Real quick, if I could just, can you go back? No, what I wanted to say was the 2 other items on there on the bottom. The network administrator was presented last year in the initial budget. This is from a technology standpoint from Mr. Roth, that he had asked that, and became a casualty from, in essence, this meeting to the next meeting. So it is still a need in terms of the network administration with everything that's going on and the reliability and the reliance that we have on the technology. It's in addition to his team that's there. This should reduce a little bit of the sourcing costs that we work with JLR. This will reduce that a little bit. I don't have an exact number, but I did ask him to discuss that a little bit. So this is something that has been there for a little while, and we put it back on, knowing the need and obviously the importance of technology and everything going on. And he may do a better job of explaining that. And then finally, the last one, administrative support, has been talked about probably since I got here. This is someone to support kind of a crossover between both Jim and Doug in the office, as they are kind of floating right now without, and everyone helps to pick up. And so this one will pick up the purchase orders, and this one will do this. But really, with what they're trying to do with the asset tag system and trying to really kind of modernize that department there, it's a matter of supporting them as a support person, for lack of a better term. And just as I don't know if it's a cost savings or whatnot, but when we reduced a position, if you remember, there was at the 4-5 building, there was 2 staff members, 2 secretaries, and one had recently retired, and both of them had benefits. So we asked Sandy to kind of hold the benefit. When we replaced it, with the same position that is sitting at Hereford and Marlboro, 10-month without the benefit piece there. So the benefit piece to this administrative support there is currently in the budget. So the dollar figure we're talking about and Sandy, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not simply the salary, but it's the salary piece and not the added piece that we try to think ahead when we move that for discussion here.
Yep. Yeah, and I think there's also that administrative support. I just want to give a little bit of kudos because I did talk to Doug about that. And I know originally, I think they both had an administrative support person that they had asked for that got to the chopping block last year. And they said they could live, but yeah, they need it, and they work really well together. And I had talked to Doug, and he suggested that maybe they would be asking for a dual person, and I said that was a great idea because I know they can both use it.
Questions. Do we have enough personnel for everything that they've requested? Is there anything that you put on the chopping block and said, no, we don't need that extra position or anything like that? I'm sure it happens.
Yes. Yeah. There's things that have not made it to this list here. Sure.
But you feel confident that with this list, you'll have everything you'll need.
I think, there's a balance here, right? I mean, a balanced budget, but I think it's when you ask people, will tell you what they need, and you got to take our time to analyze the different requests and see where we can, share here and share there, and understanding. I mean, even when we get to the end of the presentation, there's going to be a gap there that we're going to still have to have conversations to. So, you're not seeing the full conversation. Last year, we started to have a 4 and 5 year staffing conversation. And I think that got a little goofed up here with the pandemic and the head down, so to speak. The last 2 ones there are more strategic thinking longer term type of thing. The teacher piece, that's a little more year to year. When students are moving type of thing. So I think what we're presenting, we feel comfortable with if we can continue to find ways to fund this piece here along with everything else we're trying to do. I mean, there may be a time we have to sharpen even harder, and that's where we are right now. But it's not everything, but it's the piece that I think we feel comfortable sharing at this time.
Okay. You good, Keith? I can't see you. I can only hear you.
Yes, I'm good.
You don't fit on my screen. Okay. All right. We ready to roll?
The next area is some new additional contracted services. So we have support counselors. As I said earlier, we would see this on. The counselors for Lakeside are budgeted at $240,000. We did not budget for those last year. So when we didn't have a full day K program, we reallocated the Ready to Learn block grant and to partially support the Lakeside counselors that Dr. Farina had added, and felt that it was really critical, obviously because of COVID and everything that was going on, that these counselors were needed for the students. So the intention of, I believe what they would like to do is continue with those counselors for the 21-22 year. And again, they are, it's a contracted service. So it's something that you could look at, on an annual basis. The instructional substitute support, as you know, we use ESS for Source for Teachers, different name, but to support our staffing for substitutes in the building, some, on the long-term basis sometimes as a substitute. And then we have substitutes in the building that fill in when needed. So obviously their rates go up each year. Our need has increased, possibly because of COVID, but in the buildings, as you know, there's not a vast number of teachers and substitutes that we're able to acquire during the year. So we do have some that we employ like the entire year through Source for Teachers as a day-to-day building sub. So those costs have increased. Administrative temporary support, this year there was a need, and there's a feeling that possibly going forward, so we wanted to make sure there was some funds allocated to that. There was $25,000 actually in next year's budget. This year we needed it, one, to help with contact tracing, to support one of the offices as they're going through some changes, and then if people are, there's been some leaves, so it helps support those areas also. Doug put in for feasibility study, and I guess it's time. If you think about it, it's been a number of years since we had the architect do a feasibility study for our district. That is like another $40,000 that's in the budget. Custodial services, as you know, we have difficulty sometime in hiring like part-time or full-time sometimes in custodial services. So this year we have used a service. We were able to have a kind of like the substitute service for teachers, a custodial service that filled in, and we do have $20,000 budgeted in that area. Now, transportation, as you know, we have a new contractor. There's definitely going to be an increased cost over last year, no matter whoever took over the service. It is a significant increase. And if you look at the budget summary, you can see like it ranges, it's around $650,000. That's not just, it's the new service, it's paying for midday. We also have in possible, summer, some additional dollars in for summer program. So that is a extreme increase in cost to the district. What we were paying previously was reasonable, and we weren't paying for midday, and we didn't have the summer program that we'll have this coming year. So there's a lot of additional costs that we're incurring in that area also.
I have a question, Sandy, on the midday.
Yes.
If we're having full day K, other than the Western Center, what midday do we have?
That's all we'll have is the midday, but when you didn't pay for any midday.
Oh, true. Okay, gotcha.
So, it's definitely an increase, and it, believe it or not, adds up to a significant difference in what we were paying previously.
Okay, thank you.
So that's for our additional contracted services. As you can see, that's a little bit over $1 million. Moving forward. Now, this year, because of COVID, we have some positions in the budget that we want to maintain, but we didn't expend in their current budget. One is a full-time maintenance position, which I think we've talked about for 3 years. We've had it in.
Yep.
So I'm continuing to keep it in because Doug is recognizing that he really needs some more support services there. If you think about it, we put it in. I don't even think we had the new building yet. So we've increased the buildings. There's definitely an increased need to have that type of position. Security safety services. If you remember, we had put in I think $170,000 to support, to have yet to define whether it be armed or unarmed. I believe we were looking at unarmed, one at the high school and one at the middle school. COVID changed that in the sense that we really didn't have students in school. Then we had lower numbers, and that wasn't the priority on the list with everything else that needed to be dealt with, and to try to actually limit individuals into the school to a point. So basically this year we're spending more on nursing services, obviously because of the need in the pandemic, but those positions are still in the budget. It just weren't expended in this year. And the last one, crossing guards. I have begged, borrowed everything, contacted people, tried my best to find an able body to be crossing guards, and we have no one. And we hired a company, we have a contract, they can find no one. I reached out to the company that has the person at the high school, they have no one. We reached out to the company we had last year, they have no one. And it's like twice a week we reach out, and really, really need that. If anyone knows anyone that wants to be a crossing guard or a company that has them, please pass it my way. I'd be happy to try to coordinate that. And right now, we have wonderful administrators and staff, and they're filling in at the buildings as we started school to try to make sure the traffic flows as best that we can. As you know, there's an increase in drivers of parents driving students, so they aren't riding the buses. So it's increased that traffic load, but I have to say everybody's pitching in and trying to make it as safe as possible for our students.
So we would like
Crossing
to.
guards do we need? I'm sorry.
That's okay, good.
We need a 5.
Okay.
So the reason this is here to try to maintain this is we know we have a retirement in our security personnel. So Doug and I are trying to work on a couple different ideas to combine actually the bullet 2 and 3 there for a couple reasons. One, like I said, we can't find people, but also if we're able to parlay that into the crossing guards themselves, or at least the major pieces. Right now, as Sandy mentioned, the parent entrance and exit at the middle school, it's a 2-person job. I was there this morning watching Jen direct traffic and Doug cross students. While I was getting constructive feedback from a couple people. So yeah, there's definitely some safety concerns that are there, and making sure that. So anyway, we're working on that. So hopefully we don't have that. Doug and I met a couple times on it, and we're checking on a couple of things. So we'd like to bring that back for the same reasons. Again, still the safety and security piece, but now with the other opening in that major intersection up there at the high school is one that's got to be addressed as well. We've been fortunate enough to have someone there that is comfortable in doing that. But really, this shift to us to own this from the municipalities has been tough. We've been fortunate in another area where they've handled that, but they're still struggling to find someone out in a different municipality. So it's everywhere. Good news is the 4 or 5 drop off open as I was there this morning as well, with doors opening earlier, has been fantastic.
Great.
For drop off in the morning. Yeah, the afternoon's a little hectic, but that's expected. But it's been much improved there with getting doors open earlier. And I don't even think there was a line there at all today, more than 6-7 cars.
That's great. Oh, that's great. That's really good news.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Excellent.
So now the summary for the expenditures. This is a summary by major object: instruction, support services, operations, and other financing. So as you can see, we reached a $70 million mark, 70,722,53. The largest percentage being obviously in instruction, where it should be, and then second, support services. And I'll talk a little bit about the other financing services. That is higher than usual. This year, so as you know, our charter school population has grown. Hopefully that will change next year, but the expense is large. And when we're doing our calculation for paying charter schools, certain count codes are calculated into that calculation. And it's all based on your budget. So it's not based on actual expenditures, it's based on budget. The fear, with not knowing what will happen, I needed to budget enough funds to cover our charter school expenses. But I didn't want to overestimate and then increase our cost for tuition to the charter schools when really that wasn't going to occur. So we added additional amount, quite a bit amount, like almost 1.5, a little over 1.5 million, moved it out of the 1,000 instructional area, which have a higher percentage, and into the budgetary reserve. So there's funds there to support if needed, but it's not allocated under the instructional area for charter schools, and hope that those students that left for charter because of the pandemic will be back in our buildings and provided the education through the Upper Perkiomen School District. So that's why that looks a little quite different than usual. Usually it's much.
Just so you know. Yeah, that's ugly.
I know. So this is just a graphic presentation of the expenditures. As you can see, where we want to be, instruction is obviously the highest, with support services, and then operations of non-instructional services.
Can I ask you a quick question? Because I just don't remember, and I didn't go get my big budget book to find out. What, off the top of your head, what was this year's budget?
66,600,000. You'll see that shorter.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, I couldn't remember if it was 64 or 66 or 67. I couldn't remember. Too many numbers floating in my head.
So I know we presented revenue in February, I believe. And I went through the local, state, and federal at that point. I do have some of the ESSER funds budgeted, not all of it, just a portion for some of the expenditures. I will be revisiting the revenue area once we, sit down and decide how much of ESSER funds we'll be using to support next year's budget, but we have to be careful. It is one-time revenue. Also, the state has not passed their budget yet, but apparently they're meeting, and there is some discussion about how some of their ESSER funds will be used or allocated. So waiting to hear, it would be helpful once the budget is passed to know where we stand for subsidy. We're not, as we talked about it last time or in February, we're not projected to receive a lot of state subsidies and at least additional state subsidies. So it doesn't have a great impact on the district. So, we're showing here, this is the 0 millage increase. Obviously with all the initiatives moving forward, this is the maximum 3.7% millage increase. As you can see, the change in the fund balance needs to support the budget as being presented tonight from 4.9 million to 3.4 million. Still significant difference between revenue and expenditures, which of course we need to work on. But I have to say, with instituting a new program and all the other items that are as the needs for support for students, the 3.7, and I know we spoke about this earlier, the board decided they would not go for exceptions, understood, but that possibly the 3.7, our maximum index, would be needed to support the budget. And right now, by what is being presented, you can see that that is needed. Now moving forward. Then these are just the graphs. If it was at the 0 millage increase, and you can see the share of local is very large. And then of course increases with 3.7% and the new possible millage moving forward.
Okay.
Now, major increases, each time I look at, okay, so where are the actual major increases budget-wise? And many of them, it's expected, salaries, retirement. And you can see here's the 2020, 2021 or current budget, 66.6 million. And right now, what we're proposing right now is 70.7, and it's a 6.12% increase, which is a large percentage increase. The salaries are 984, as you can see. Then you have retirement, some purchase professional and technical services. The VOTEC, they have, just like us, I have an increase this year. And then this is where I was showing the budgetary reserve, which includes a charter that was added for 1.5 million. Now you're going to say, you're showing me major increases of 4.6, but my increase is just over 4 million. There are some adjustments in the budget that are decreases, or at least increases aren't as great. For example, I'm showing you right now retirement, which is in the 230 is 440,000. But the overall 200 account with all the benefits, even though there's an increase for all your payroll related, being Social Security, retirement benefits, there is our medical benefits. The medical decrease, the RX went up. The overall increase there was a slight increase, but the contributions are taken into consideration that is part of the employee agreements. So that went up 1%. So what I do is I negate that. Plus, there's some changes in the benefits themselves as people changing from single or married and so forth, or buyout. So with that adjustment, that helped keep well, it's not really an increase in the medical and RX area, that reduced that. So it keeps a 200 area, which has all the benefits, at a reduced level, because in the medical end, that was decreased by like 278,000, which is significant.
Mm-hmm.
Supplies are down, and that's more in the technology end, because we bought, I don't know how many computers. I lost count a long time ago.
A lot.
So some things in computer and technology supplies that we had needed definitely to purchase this year. A lot of it was in the budget. Some was supported by the ESSER funds, but there's just less needed for next year in that area because we had some increased needs this year. Refunds are down. If you remember, I was carrying for the last maybe 3 years a significant amount for a real estate refund that I knew was going to occur at some point. That actually has occurred this year, so I no longer need to budget for that refund. moving forward. So that was help, and that was over like $100,000. Our debt service is down 100,000 overall. So those decreases help offset, some of the major increases that you're seeing. Moving forward. Oh, last slide. Next meeting, April 16th at 6 p.m.
Well,
So now we have our work cut out for us in looking at, what adjustments we can make. Now, I will warn you too, as we go through, it's possible we'll find some things we need to increase as well as looking at any decreases. But trying to bring that percentage increase, to reduce that percentage increase as it currently stands.
Something that we have not had a chance to do yet, as we're waiting for the process to go through here, is, we have the retirements, so we haven't gone through until we get a better handle on how many students are returning in person, how many students potentially virtual. So that'll really be a scouring of the staffing. Normally that happens a little earlier than now. The high school's currently going through their class enrollments and collecting assignments and doing classes and whatnot here. So obviously we're going to do our best to
do we have any idea when any of that'll be a little more final? Just with regard to, I know we have to.
Well, again, I think I'm very concerned with, again, when I shared the numbers on Thursday with our initial look at this week's numbers, where roughly 79% of the population across the district is in person and 29, I guess, are in a virtual or UPOLA environment. So the more, if you take a look at the cost of scale, right, the more students that are in and the less students that are not. When you have the program is fractured. So that will help to determine the class size as well as the overall coverage for those students. Again, I said we're still working on what the virtual option will look like moving forward next year. There are some districts that are saying, like, for example, one district in our superintendent group that is saying, we just can't do a secondary virtual model like they're doing right now with people rooming and Zooming and all that kind of stuff. I guess we have the capability, but we can't do a full section of everything that's virtual, similar to the elementary piece. Or districts that don't have the UPOLA type thing, they're doing full, they simply have their roster and they split it and kids come and kids go. So every district's a little different. So we're hoping to have a survey here later in April to collect the feedback to give us kind of a ballpark of where people are. And then again, probably another declaration here to see. I think people are still hesitant to know where they're going to be right now. Many families took the declaration very seriously and said, okay, we're making our decision here. And I think I shared with you the numbers of people that changed. And there was, numbers that people may have changed just to change. There were other people that were going to change regardless. So yeah, that'll happen over the next month or so as the building principals work on those numbers and we look at class size and the kindergarten enrollment's going to help dictate that. That's what's projected right now are those 4. If the enrollment rule goes one way or versus goes the other way, it's well over 100. So that's positive. So those little staffing things are a part of that conversation moving forward.
Do we know when we're going to get to a point that we know? I don't know when kindergarten registration ends or if it ever does.
September 10th is when it ends.
That's
Usually.
what I thought. Yeah, right. What I thought.
No, this year, more so than any other year, normally we're knee deep in this conversation. It's just so unpredictable right now where we are. And I think things are they're going to be fluid through the summer. I really think people are going to wait and see what happens. We're hearing, fourth wave or whatever you want to say, where we're going to be. It's going to, until we're declared, no masks or whatever it's going to be, people will not feel like we're ready to go back. So
Yeah.
It's just going to be an ebb and a flow to do that.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I have one more question for Sandy. Do we have the big budget book yet?
We do have one, yes.
I would love to come pick one up.
All right, we can print one for you.
That would be great. Thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else?
I was gonna say, on that vein, last year you did that wonderful Excel, it was like 64 sheets of Excel or something, I can't even remember. But that where we could see all the different numbers.
And play with them?
What'd you say?
And play with them?
Yeah, are we gonna have something similar?
I'm trying to think I'm not sure I remember exactly what that
It
look.
was one where it had all the basic categories, and then you could dive down into them and see
Okay.
exactly where everything was.
All right, I'll look back. I have what I have now. Let me look because I think maybe I know. Right now in the SharePoint, I do have all the function codes on there and they're total by function, and then the object and totals by object. But I'll have to look at last year. I'm sorry.
Are they, are they Excel spreadsheets?
No, they could be. What I did is I scanned them from the big budget book that Melanie's speaking of.
Well, you know,
I-
let me take a look at that then, because I didn't realize that you had a breakdown already in the SharePoint. I'm gonna be full disclosure there. I hadn't looked for the information yet.
No, I didn't either.
It wasn't
So
in
if
there
it's
when you
already,
looked. That's why.
so it may already be there. So don't do anything until I look and see what you've already put. It might be plenty for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds good. Keith, do you have anything? Again, I can't see you.
Nothing. That's
Okay.
pretty much it.
What do you think we'll be covering next meeting on the 16th?
That's a good question. I don't know. I have to meet with Dr. Roach and we'll have to discuss some, areas in the budget or try to dig down deeper. Because, there's probably a million numbers within the budget book that you're familiar with. We could look at that and then I'll look again at the revenues. We could do some comparisons as far as in previous years. I'm not sure that's going to help, but
Yeah.
it's such an odd year for us too. We're going to have to look at the grants and moving forward. Now you have until 2024 to spend the ESSER 3 funds that will be coming our way at some point. So there's a lot of things different this year than in prior years because of.
Is there ever going to be 2 years in a row where we can compare? No, probably not.
Well, we provide, even so, we could, do a year, we do comparisons, or Dan does for me all the time. We comparing the last 4 years to where we are today. We could build in, what the budget is compared to expenditures, and that might be part of what Judy's referring to. We can do that, and at least it gives you some history. But 1920 was difficult because of areas where we didn't spend money, and then areas where we did, things we had to spend money on, and the services obviously weren't the same. So, it's a difficult year to compare to. If you remember, we were able to transfer money into capital, which has really been helpful for us because we're to support our Giza project, the changes to Hereford, and the playground. Some items that we really need. You as a board, it's great because you're now able to support those programs. Some districts, but by keeping those expenses, in 1920 being down, that allowed for us to do some of that. But then it's difficult to use as a comparison moving forward.
Right. True. That's true.
Sandy, your last slide there had April 16th. That's Friday night at 6 o'clock. I'm not sure we're going to have a meeting.
Is it really? What was I looking at?
Man.
Okay, I won't show the last slide.
The ninth, I think it's the 19th, right? The 19th.
Okay,
That
I was
makes
looking
sense.
at the website. I don't know what I was looking at then. I must have been the wrong year. I'm not sure.
I don't know, hot Friday night discussing budget with Sandy. What more can you ask for?
That's right. What
I
a
keep hearing her say
I'll be there.
1920.
Sandy, I'll be there.
I keep hearing,
I'll be
I
there.
I keep hearing you say 1920, and I'm thinking you weren't here back then. You're not that old.
Yeah, right. 1920. She was here in 1921. She
He's
was.
like, year is 19-20. So
I have to admit, the first time he said 1920, I thought the same thing. I was like, I guess it's meant 2020. Then
I'm not the only one.
The second time he said it, I went, oh, year 19/20. So, but the very
Exactly.
first time I thought it was just a,
A year. A year.
And I thought I was muted when my dog started barking also, so.
It's okay. I think we're all used to that by now. Everybody has stuff in their Zoom meetings.
Yeah, so
It's all
Melanie,
good.
answer your question. I think, I mean, Sandy's put a tremendous amount of work into this. It really gives us just about under 2 weeks to really fine tune it with the administrators, bring it in and, really dig in. I've got lots of questions and I'm sure everyone else will. So I think we've got our work cut out for us over the next period of time here. I think if I can just be frank here, speaking for the board in terms of, I know, we know where STEB is, that STEB is not a part of our conversation this year. So that's one thing. And then you guys have to balance out the tax increase, knowing everything that is moving forward there. From my seat, that's not a guarantee. I mean, and she's showing you 0 and showing you 3.7, but I know that's something that the board has got to discuss once you see and get into more details and into that book. So we'll work tirelessly over the next 2 weeks, and we'll take the weekend, not the 16th. We'll go to the 19th, the following Monday, for that meeting to do that. So that'll be helpful for us to dig in and really get ready for a deeper conversation on many of those levels, have some of that ideas fleshed out a little more. I can challenge the principals to get to that staffing level. And, we had and examine the retirements that are there and get a little closer to our class size conversations, because that all plays a role in it. Again, the unknown right now is going to be what the virtual world looks like. Again, we were able to manage that, but there was provided some help elementary wise at our with some long-term subs to help us through that, as Sandy mentioned. So
Yep.
I think it's a good standpoint. And then at the same time, I think I remember having the conversation last year with Dr. Drake. If we're going to utilize some of the fund balance as has been the practice, how much are we willing to tolerate that in terms of to help fill that in, knowing where we are going to be? And maybe Sandy, and I don't want to put you on the spot and I don't expect an answer now. Do we know what that's going to look like heading down the road here? Which the answer is no, I know that, but that would be helpful to help fine tune. Like you had identified $300,000 of money we haven't touched yet. That's been in the budget. That's good for people to know that come the end of the year, that money will be there as well, even though we'll have plans for it next year, but that one just didn't pan out. So I don't know,
Okay.
lots of work. I got lots of Post-it notes here to get working. So I just appreciate Sandy's effort in putting it all together.
Always. Yep.
I'd like to go back to the discussion regarding the virtual world come 2021. Or I guess it'd be 21, 22. God, geez, 21, 22. So hopefully there won't be much of a need for the virtual. We had a virtual platform already kind of established. I think we used a lot of ingenuity and some other things, but we did have students who were in, Upper Perks cyber school, for lack of a better wording for it. Can we just go back to that type of a program where we're not utilizing, say, Mr. Folks from the middle school, or Mrs. Hauer from the 4-5, like something along the lines of what we used to have?
Yeah, I'll answer a little bit, then I'll defer to Kim because I know that she's a little more in her wheelhouse. I think that program was more so secondary. That's my understanding. But I think if you think about what the service people got this year and what they're going through right now in Upola, and it's a level of service, right? So we don't want to see a mass exodus of students out to cyber schools, which are going to be providing asynchronous content with a person. The Edgenuity had more of a well, it was definitely asynchronous, but I don't know if a teacher was tied to it, and there's a cost associated with it as well. So I think we have a balance there. We've already seen a lot of people leave, our numbers being down, let's say plus 200 plus from where we were prior to where we are now. Not all of those costing money out the door, but some. So yeah, I think that's the whole conversation right now. And Kim, I'll defer to you because you have a better handle on that.
I think you summed it up well, Dr. Roach. What we want to do is not continue to lose students, and we want to be able to say, if you want asynchronous, we can help you with that. If you want synchronous, we can help you with that. We're very fortunate to have Sarah Rothermel with us, who was in the cyber world. And so, she and Dr. Farina and I have been tossing around a number of ideas, which we'll share with Dr. Roach, I think on Friday. Or early next week, and really just thinking about what can we do to not decrease the level of service and to keep our kids, our Upper Perk kids here and meeting their needs. I know we haven't heard a lot of it, but maybe you have or haven't, but there are some kids thriving in this environment and really wanting to stay connected to their peers, but not face to face, and certainly their community and their teachers. So right now we're trying to figure out how best to make that happen. And we feel like in the long run, it might actually save us money that we don't have to pay out to cyber charters. And I know that would probably make Sandy happy in her retirement as she reflects on what we're doing.
That would make all of us happy.
Yes.
So Judy, part of that planning was, I mentioned a couple of times, a questionnaire or something here mid-April to the end will be to gather some of this information in different scenarios. If this was available, would you be interested? This is like, if you're interested in virtual, is it asynchronous piece or is it the UPOLA live piece? Because that's where I think when Mrs. Bass says kids are thriving, that's the feedback we're getting, that they're being successful. So they've taken their piece off the board for the whole year because that's what we asked them to do back in September, and they're just following that. I will tell you a quick story. I've seen a young lady walk into the 4-5 today, dressed to the nines, brand new backpack. She's like, I haven't been here in a year. Because she had picked whatever, and it was just warmed my heart to see her doing her thing. At any rate, so those are some of the challenges that I think if you take a hard line, again, as I mentioned, there's some secondary districts that are in the secondary world are saying we can't. So it's either going to be all in or out. And I don't know if they will lose students or if what they can provide is going to be what it is right now. And I don't know if we can, once we have more numbers, are you able to identify a section at 6th or a section here or a section there to support those students versus what's going on right now with and the room and Zoom conversation is still up for discussion. I know it's not ideal, right? So it's what we said is the worst of the 3 models. And we've all learned that through the hybrid piece. So we got to see those numbers and try to support those students. Some left for the 5 days. They just wanted 5 days in wherever. So they may come back when we're 5 days. They may have found a home somewhere else. Some went to other cyber saying, hey, these guys have been doing it for years, so they got to be doing better than you guys because you haven't done it. And they weren't happy with what they saw March to June of last year, which no one was. We were happy about doing the best we could, but we definitely improved on it. And even that elementary UPOLA piece, there's conversations about if you had a certain number of students across a grade level, not regardless of school, you combine them. So it's not necessarily a grade level at every building. It could be just first grade UPOLA, right? So a different conversation when you look at the numbers. So to not have it looking differently there. So.
Thank you. I was just wondering, because this has seemed so complicated this year. And I was just wondering if there was a way we could make it less complicated for all of you guys.
Yeah, totally up for that. Totally.
Oh, there's my dog.
Your turn.
Oh, thank you. Like I said, I just wanted, I knew we had something previously, but I guess I wasn't aware that it was mostly secondary. And
expensive from what I was told.
Probably was.
Yeah, it's very expensive. And the company that we have used for 6 to 12 does not have a good K-5 platform. And so that was one of the things we were in search of this year. And so we found some pieces. So taking everything we learned, we're going to try to build a package that will save us money in the long run. And it's really appealing to our students. So we'll see if we can pull that off.
Fingers crossed. Good luck. Good luck on that one.
Get out your marketers and have somebody market it well.
Yeah, exactly. Keith, anything? Judy, anything else? You good? Okay.
I'm good, thank you.
Let me know when the old budget book's ready and I'll come and get it. Thank you, and thank you. Anybody else have anything else? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Go ahead, Judy.
Did you say?
Go
I'll
ahead.
let you do it.
Oh, okay. I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor? All right.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
All right. See you guys all on Thursday.